We once a month have what you guys seem to feel is one of our best shows each month when Cathie Wood does her Employment Friday report. Larry's not sure that's a right to call it Employment Friday this month.
Unemployment Friday.
Unemployment Friday.
Non-employment Friday.
Non-employment
Okay.
Friday. Anyway, but this was last Friday night, I think, that she came out with this, but Larry and I were traveling in various directions and we were unable to do it last weekend. So here we are, though, with this analysis, which we take a look at what Cathie says and we try to add our special sauce.
The irony is you traveled here to North Carolina while I was traveling to New York, so we missed each other, even though you traveled across country to be in my state.
In your state, close by.
And I was at the Barron conference, which was very interesting, and I hope that you run a program to comment on it. It was a really great conference. He's something else, Ron Barron.
Yeah, well, we did spend a lot of time yesterday talking about Elon Musk's part of it. Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Good, very good. So in this non-employment Friday, and we should explain that the non-employment Friday was because the government was shut, we didn't get unemployment figures, which, is really a big problem. But it's fair to say that Cathie did a fantastic job. And as you say, it's one of her best shows ever. Cathie Wood is, one of the, I guess, the leading economists. So this is November in the know analysis for a non-employment Friday. And it's all about market turbulence, liquidity issues. We're going to talk about liquidity at length here and how Cathie sees the path forward. So for November 15th, here's the executive summary of Cathie's thesis. Firstly, we can talk about the current state. The current state, markets are extremely nervous. Guess why your shares are down? Because liquidity is drying up. The Treasury General account is at $940 billion instead of $600 billion, which is normal. And the February balance sheet is down to $6.6 trillion, for what it was almost $10 trillion at one point. And we've had a government shutdown. So the government's no longer doling out the cash.
To people that actually deserve it.
To people that actually deserve it. So they're sitting on cash, and it's like your bank refusing to give you your own money back.
Right.
However, we do expect this to clear by year end. So the short-term crisis, which the market is treating like, well, maybe this is a serious problem going forward, is actually very short-term and is going to clear up by year end.
Okay.
So there's another factor that goes beyond the short-term crisis, but it may be impacted by the short-term crisis, and that is the Fed is wrong again. Congratulations, Fed. You get 10 out of 10 for being wrong. Now, let's be fair. Trying to project the economy, trying to predict the economy is a loser's game. I mean, we know that experts pretty much get less than 50% right. It's unusual to get 100% wrong, but the Fed is managing to do that quite accurately. There are deflationary signals mounting, and yet they are increasingly hawkish. Commodity index is at early 80s, 90s level, and Cathie's been calling this out, and we're going to look at that in detail. Metals and gold, metals versus gold, metals are falling in relation to gold. Oil is declining. China's exports are experiencing deflation. And despite all of this evidence, the Fed remains hawkish, to say it yet again, to underscore and underscore the underscore. What's the game changer? Why is Cathie so hawkish? Because of OB3.
Is that a robot?
Bill.
Oh, okay.
One big, beautiful bill. Okay. What does that mean? It means Trump has implemented a revolutionary tax policy, 100% first-year depreciation for manufacturing equipment R&D software, effective corporate rate drops to 10%. We're going to talk about that at length because this is very important. And this is attracting massive foreign direct investment into the country. So the economic trajectory, in summary, is that we've had this rolling recession with the labor market weakening, consumer stress, housing paralysis, which the Fed is doing everything in their power to extend. There's a rolling recovery going on despite the Fed. OB3 policies are taking effect, liquidity normalizing. If the Fed will allow it, productivity boom, AI, capital spending, manufacturing renaissance converging. We're seeing the convergence of all the movements taking place. And the key developments is capital spending is breaking a 30-year ceiling. Our capital spending has been depressed for 30 years in this country. AI is disrupting employment while boosting productivity, auto delinquencies at crisis levels, housing at 1970 volume. So we've got this tug of war going on in the economy. The government and bad policies resulting from the pandemic and the response to the pandemic are have caused this rolling recession, and the Fed is trying to maintain that rolling recession decline while the government, the administration, is trying to punch the accelerator. So we have this accelerator brake situation going on. And Cathie has this bull market thesis. The bull market that we believe, sorry?
Go ahead.
The bull market that we believe is firmly in place will continue apace. Short-term pain clearing, leading to transformation underway, leading to 2026 boom ahead. That's the summary of everything we're going to learn. You agree with that, or you
so
on the line?
I 100% agree with it, but I think we should always, at least from my standpoint, we should always layer on the demographics. And people just don't layer on the demographics. I don't know why, but you've got the aging baby boom controlling 50% of the wealth of the country, are more age 55 and above, 50% are more the wealth, huge percentages of the housing stock. And you've got the immigration, which was 2 million a year coming in, maybe more than 2 million a year, 3 million, 4 million a year coming in. Now you have none coming in and lots going home, maybe as much as 2 million this year. This is impacting the economy also in a bunch of different ways. And to not layer all of that on top of the rest of it, I think is an error.
Yeah, it would be interesting to try and formalize the analysis to see how these different issues impact. As far as the baby boomers retiring, and I should have retired 20 years ago. You should have retired 20 years ago, or maybe 15 years ago. But it's hard to tell whether the impact is that serious. We do understand that the employment numbers, the total employment population is declining, and largely because the unfettered immigration has stopped. But we're still getting immigration, and I don't think it's net immigration, but we're still getting immigration in like the legal channels.
Right.
That immigration is still coming in, and that's much more valuable immigration than the immigration of the very low-paid workers. Because those people are actually detracting from the employment of legitimate people, of Americans and legal immigrants.
Right.
So, it's a very complex situation. But you may be right, and maybe that's one of the reasons the economy is still, holding back a little bit.
Well,
but when you think about the massive investments that are being made, they lead to employment of fairly well-paid people.
Oh no, I think everything that Cathie Wood says is right about where the economy is going to go. I just think what the things that we do know are that people over 65 don't spend on things as much as they spend on travel and experience. We know, and that's where the market is strong right now.
Right.
And things are weak. Trucking is down dramatically compared to what it was. And then the opposite side of that is we have the immigrants not taking up housing space. And so rents are coming down, and you have the most housing available in years because 70,000 families, 700,000 families just left. If you take 2 million, divide by 3 or so, you got 700,000 families that don't need a space to live. This is huge.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very interesting to see the outcome of all of this. All right, but let's dive into the actual details. We've been at the 20,000 foot level up to now, and let's now start with the first part of the thesis, and that there's the short-term liquidity crisis that will soon pass. This too will pass. I don't know about soon. So we can talk about the resolution timeline. On November 17th, the government reopening expected. Senator Thune, and here we are. We're talking about 11:15. It actually happened sooner than 11:17. I think it happened on Friday, which was yesterday, 11:16. And so 11:14, excuse me, which was like a weekend earlier than expected. It'd be interesting to see how that impacts the market on Monday. In theory, the market should improve. And December 1, 2025, quantitative tightening ends, de facto easing. So, up to now, what we talk about quantitative tightening is that the Fed has been taking money out of the money supply because they eased so much. That is, they were pumping money into the money supply by buying treasuries and buying first-class securities.
Right.
What they've done is they've been selling first-class securities, which ends up tightening the money supply. And so that's going to stop on December 1. And when they stop buying securities and their own treasury bills, then the market's going to take that up. And so that's going to end up with more liquidity in the market. And on December 10th, Cathie's saying that a Fed rate cut is expected. I will say that I've seen a lot of chatter that that's not going to happen. And given the predilection of this Fed chairman, I think that the rate cut will not happen.
It is now down to 50% in the stats in terms of, I guess you call them the betting stats. It's kind of an informal or formal betting stat that we've had on that for years and years. And it's down to 50% chance of a cut. And to your point, I think if it ends up being a big split on the board, I think the chairman will he'll be the deciding vote. Now, the Fed hates to do anything where they have a big split like that. So there's going to be, I guess, some effort, probably
jawboning.
Jawboning to try to get everybody on one side, or at least all but 2 or 3 on one side, because it looks bad in their view to have that big of a split in opinion. Also, this week, something new that I've started doing, Larry, on the channel is every few days when there's a lot of Fed speakers, I have Grok go in and analyze those speeches and give some kind of an impression of where things are. And I would say basically last week, it is split down the middle. Half of the Fed speakers were saying, yeah, it's okay to keep easing, and half are going, I don't know, it looks like I'm not sure about inflation.
And it's very troubling to me because it seems that the Fed missed an opportunity to do this much earlier.
Yes.
I think we could have kept out a recession. But, this is a Fed that has not performed well post the first Trump administration.
Larry, I'm going to
Or
throw it out
since
here. I'm going to throw it out here again. You tell me if I'm right, if you think this has any sense at all. The part of the economy and the part of the human side of the economy that's hurting is durable goods, transportation, construction, housing construction. These are the parts of the economy that are hurting. That is also the employees that are hurting. There's the under $100,000 a year people that don't have any assets. Those are the people that have been hurt the most. That everybody's starting to realize it now. Cathie's been talking about it. You and I have been talking about it for, I don't know, the whole time we've been doing this show, baby.
yeah.
It's the split economy. And it's the same people in both. And it's the Fed rates that stop durables, because the Fed rates impact credit cards and large purchases, like refrigerators and air conditioning systems or whatever. And that's, it seems to me that if they would lower the rates, we could get that part of the economy going again, which is going to help the folks.
I mean, the Fed has been crying, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. And yet it was this very Fed that brought the skies down upon us at the end of the pandemic. I mean, it's very hard. And look, it's very clear that they were trying to correct the Build Back Better bill that just piled cash into the economy, not from the Fed, really, from the administration, from the Biden administration. They forced this gigantic amount of cash after the Trump administration had already given a dollop of cash to everybody to help them over the pandemic. And the Biden administration said, you gave them $2 billion. I'm going to give them $6 billion, or trillion. I'm sorry, billion doesn't count anymore.
No.
And so, it just seems that we've had, one disaster after another. We had a, administration that overspent, and then a Fed that overcorrected. But we are just, I think the Fed scared itself, or Powell scared himself so badly that he can't get out of his own way.
Right.
Anyway.
Yep.
Cathie expects a rate cut. I guess when she cut this, it was still better than 50-50. It's now down to 50-50 and going down.
Yeah.
And so early December 2025, there will be a return of the unemployment report. We'll know when we do In the Know, or when Cathie does In the Know, so hopefully she will know. So summary is, markets extremely nervous due to short-term liquidity drying up, expect to clear within the next month. And we want to see those indicators. We can see this blue line shows the growth of the Fed balance sheet. And remember, when the Fed balance sheet grows, then, that takes money, that puts money into the economy. And the Treasury General Account has gone down again, putting money into the economy. So in 2022, we had, the absolute all-time high of cash in the economy. And the result was gigantic, but a rise in inflation. On the other hand, today, we have the Fed balance sheet going down by a third, literally a third in a matter of 2 years, and 3 years really. And we see the Treasury account, the Treasury balance is going up. The Treasury balance is going up, money's coming out of the economy. The Fed balance sheet going down, money's coming out of the economy. So we've taken this gigantic dollop of cash, almost almost $4 trillion. And, $4 trillion is already money, it's already money. So pretty serious problem. Okay.
Yep.
That's what we're going to learn now from all these. So guys, if you want, you can all leave now, because
that's the story.
No. I'm just kidding. The best is yet to come.
Oh, by far.
So the Fed policy disconnect. This is, the Fed is missing the deflationary signals, Cathie believes. And by the way, I think both of us subscribe to that as well, right? Is that
Yes. Oh, yes.
so? What are the Fed's concerns? Inflation is not unwinding. Fed officials fear inflation indicators remain sticky despite rate cuts. More hawks building. Concerning change in Fed composition towards more hawkish members. Still quite restrictive. Despite easing, Fed policy remains restricted by some measures. So Cathie said, I don't like what we're hearing from the Fed because I do think they're missing some deflationary signals out there.
I'm positive that the Fed has all the numbers that they need and probably better numbers than you and I will ever be able to see, but somehow they're missing it. Somehow they're missing it, Larry. I spend a lot of time on the channel on this whole inflationary aspect. I've become a fan of trueflation again, but even if you use the Fed's own numbers, it's clear that inflation is somewhere in the 2.6 area. You could say 2.9 because the PCE, blah, blah, blah. But you got to put all the numbers. If you put all the numbers together, we're under 3% somewhere. Now you take Fed Chairman Powell's own statement that between 4 and 6% of that is tariffs and that it's transitory. And Collins this week reiterated that. She said in her speech, it's 0.6% of that is transitory. It's not real. It's just a price increase. You take that out, you're very, very close to 2%. What are they not understanding about that?
I'll give you another thought about that. And this is kind of a novel view of it, but it's real. I believe it's real. It's my thesis. And it's borrowing from Cathie's, her teachings.
Right.
We're about to go through an explosion of technology, of innovation. I mean, nobody can argue that, the large models are going to revolutionize our society. Those are deflationary forces.
Right.
They are very powerful deflationary forces. We learned in the last industrial revolution in the late 19th century that this period of innovation drives enormous amount of deflation in the marketplace. We should be dealing with that right now. The Fed is looking 3 months ahead. They should be looking 3 to 30 years ahead.
Yeah.
And they should understand that everything is different.
Yeah.
And that's going to be my thesis from now on. I really am keyed in on what Cathie is saying because I believe that she's right. And I believe not only is she right, but it's beginning to become clear in the marketplace that she's right. Look, there's a reason for the Mag 7.
Mm-hmm.
The reason for the Mag 7 is that that's where the growth is.
Yep.
And by the way, the economy's returned to growth, very significant growth.
The GDP now is at 4%.
So when you get GDP at that level, some inflation, not as high as perhaps 4%, but some inflation is significantly acceptable. Time will tell. I mean, all I can say is that the 90s were roaring, and we should be roaring greater than the 90s right now.
Right.
Look, our commodities are down at the 80s, 90s level.
Right.
Yeah, this is the commodity index.
In real terms. This is
in
inflation.
Actual dollars.
Yeah, this is inflation adjusted.
Yeah. So we were at 100 in 1980, and we're back to 100. Guys, there was never a better time than the year 2000.
I'm sorry, I said that backwards, Larry. Commodities are not inflation adjusted because this is the commodity index. It's better than it looks because this is not inflation adjusted. This is real, what you would have paid for gas, for a barrel of oil would have been $60 a barrel, and it's now $60 a barrel.
You're exactly right.
Yep.
We misstated it. Yeah.
I misstated it. I'm not going to give you any credit for that, Larry.
All right. So next, the OB3 revolution. So one of the reasons that we're growing at this rate that we're growing, that we hit the 4% mark, and I reckon that early next year, we're going to see a 5 print.
Mhm.
It is because the OB3 tax revolution. And Cathie is very strong on this. And she said this last month, I don't know if you recall it,
100%.
but the one big beautiful bill, OB3, has created some unprecedented tax incentives, not seen, some of them never seen, and some not seen in 30 years. So the tax-related charges means that for several of these categories, and the categories are, not that easily seen, but it's manufacturing structures, equipment, domestic R&D, and software. The write-off is now, for manufacturing structures, it used to be 100% write-off in a straight line over 39 years. Between 2025 and 2028, the next 3 years, we'll be able to write that 100% down in
The year,
1
year.
year.
Yeah.
1 year.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got investments. When they passed the OBB, I looked across all the stock exchanges to find those companies that would most benefit from building data centers.
Yeah.
I found this one counter, small company called Sterling. Nobody had ever heard of it. And I bought their shares. They're already up 100% or a little bit more. And they're up much higher than that, but somebody got in long before me anyway, but they're up 100% in that time, in less than 9 months.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I'm not recommending you buy that stock, by the way. Do your own research, but I'm just giving you an example of the impact on the economy and what is and where does it impact? It impacts people building factories, building data centers, building new factories for a data center, building a new factory for vehicles, building a new factory for robots. Does it sound familiar to you?
Does it sound familiar? Yeah. So 40 years ago, Larry, I visited Ireland. And as I drove through Southern Ireland, I'm remarking to myself, this doesn't even look like a first world country. I'm still seeing thatched roofs. I'm still seeing roads that are like from another era. And then all of a sudden they lowered their tax rate to, I think, around a 12 or 14% corporate tax rate, something like 12 or 14%. And it became the highest per capita income country in the world.
Yeah, in a very short space of time, 2 decades. Yeah, a very short space of time. And when I visited Ireland most recently, which was 6 or 7 years ago, I mean, it was a buzzing, happening place.
Yeah.
It is amazing. It's truly amazing. And so that's what low taxes on your productive resources brings you.
Right.
And so in the equipment category, we see that we can write off, that we used to be able to write off 60%, and now we can write off 100%. And that's permanent. That's not for the next 3 years. That's permanent.
Permanent.
Domestic R&D, we can now fully expense, whereas we used to have to write it down over 5 years, and that's permanent. And software, which, which we used to be able to write off 60% of, we can now write off 100%. These last 3 categories are permanent.
Mm-hmm.
And if you add them all up, the total of CapEx, it adds up to the total. But if you look at the really impactful one, 5.6% of all, these are 5% of all CapEx was in manufacturing structures. I believe that number is going to jump this year.
Right.
I think it's going to jump to 15, 20% because of all the data centers being created and the manufacturing plants. Well, and whether it is fabs for Samsung or fabs for TSMC, whether it is factories for Tesla, factories for these robot manufacturers, factories for these electric airplanes, factories for these supersonic airplanes, I think we're going to see a profusion of generation of them. And we're going to see new companies spring up that we haven't even heard of before. and they're going to build factories.
And I also think the market gets it, but I'm not sure the average citizen gets it.
No,
That the number of companies that are onshoring. I mean, it's drip, drip, drip. You get the pharmaceuticals, telling us that they're going to put in a facility that's going to employ 5,000.
yes.
There's several of those, and then you've got Tesla saying no more Chinese parts in their cars. They're moving 100% US. That matters. You have over and over again, you're hearing about these companies that are onshoring, recognizing that they can onshore. You've got the rare earth minerals that are going to be made in the United States now, all the way to the level of the magnets. And and then you have 17 trillion, according to Trump, you have $17 trillion of new investment coming to the United States. Some of that will be going into those pharmaceuticals. Some of those might be going into some of those aircraft type products or those data centers. But $17 trillion coming in for this kind of activity is massive. So you have all those things.
Even if he's trumping those numbers up, by double or even triple, that's real money. That is real money. Yep. So now we want to look at, the impact of these tax changes. So if you look at US, which is statutory like 22%, the effective rate is going to drop in OB3 is going to drop to 10% effective rate. Ireland, we just talked about, is at 12.5%. And look at the revolution that they went through. Singapore was the next lowest, which had 17%. And I can't even begin to tell you how wealthy Singapore has become. One of the reasons is because they, are very, very supportive of new industry and new ventures. OECD, all of the developed countries together, the average is at 23%. So you can expect, whereas we were a little bit below the average, we are now way below the average. And so our effective rate with OB3 with 10%, huge impact. And by the way, you know who's going to be the biggest beneficiary of this? Talk about unintended consequences.
Go
The
ahead.
next president of the United States.
It'll really start to show up at the end of the Trump administration. Yeah.
So to your point, Cathie's pointing out that we're going to get massive direct investments and unprecedented international capital flows as companies relocate operations to take advantage of the lowest corporation. Big tax refunds in year one. So by the end of this year, by the beginning of next year, we'll start to see the impact of the huge tax refunds, and very pro-growth, very pro-business. So one of the most important issues, the most important, if not the most important issues, is that, we're going to see a lot of the regulations that surrounded the opening of any factory and the building of any new business. We're going to see a lot of the redundant regulations cleared away, certainly at the federal level, and then possibly even at many of the state levels.
And Larry, just a real quick one. There's another thing that's going to be happening in the first quarter of next year. It's been reported, and I've talked about it on the show, but it's not just going to be corporate returns that are going to be impacted in the first quarter in terms of that they have lower taxes, therefore they get potentially not having to pay any taxes next year, but also the consumers, the people with tips, the Social Security, and the overtime. Those folks they didn't change their tax plan to stop the amount of money going to the federal government. So the refunds that they get in the first quarter, they're talking about that being a massive stimulus.
And remember that there's going to be another refund that you haven't mentioned, and that is provisional taxes paid by corporations up to the timing of the big bill. Yeah. So some of that's going to be refunded.
Yeah, that's the first half. Yeah, right.
Yeah. So budget deficit and SNAP spending disconnect. I published a couple of slides, which maybe I should have brought here, showing how SNAP has grown out of all proportion to the population. that we have had this constant increase in the percentage of population that's getting SNAP benefits, and a constant increase in the amount of SNAP, in real terms, a constant increase in the amount of SNAP benefits being paid, to the extent that it's really become a very big issue. But here we have SNAP participation versus unemployment and the poverty rate. So the SNAP participation rate has grown from 8% in 2003 of population. By the way, it was down to like 2% when it started, got to 6%. Then it climbed to, and whenever there's a recession, it climbs a little bit, and then it drops, but it never drops to the percentage it was before the recession. And here we are, we had this recession in 2010, which caused this rise, and we see the gentle return, but back up again in 2021, and we're now at 25% population. What it's not of the population, what it's not showing is the actual benefits, because the actual benefits have risen out of proportion to the population. We see the unemployment rate. We see that there is a relationship, or there was not at this point, but there is now a little bit of a relationship between a SNAP participation rate and the unemployment rate. And then, sorry, this is the unemployment rate. And then the poverty rate. The poverty rate, you know, it's interesting. The poverty rate is falling, but the SNAP benefits are not falling in the same proportion.
So Larry, there was news on this on Friday. Is the Agriculture Department says they're going to require that all SNAP beneficiaries reapply.
Yep, that's going to have a big impact.
Huge.
And if they would stop adding sugary drinks to SNAP allowances, it's not even funny. It's at least 2 or 3% of the total expenditures on SNAP.
Yeah.
It's stunning the amount of money that is going into sugary drinks, which is a doubly negative effect.
Right.
So DOGE is reducing the impact of, so that's a big change to what's happening in SNAP, and that's only very recent. The government shutdown has been accompanied by a reduction in force, which actually increases SNAP, and then broader reduction in force underway across government. The area that I don't see us really taking action is in local government, state and local government. That's where the growth in employment has been the greatest of all sectors in the economy.
Right.
And it's been out of all proportion, so it's really serious. So we're at SNAP participation of 12.5%. The poverty rate is 10%. We would expect SNAP to be 10%, but it's not. It's 10. You know, it's 12.5%. So it's, you know, a good 25% higher than it should be. This is, I mean, this is really only just one example.
Oh, of course.
Of budget problems. Now, the AI impact on the labor market is very real. We see that even though S&P 500 has gone up after ChatGPT, this is ChatGPT moment, the earnings per share has gone up, and of course the stock market has gone up. But look at the job declines. This is ChatGPT, this is job declines. Now, I will also add that, you know, there's a little bit of a distortion here, because the GPT moment happened at about the same time that Silicon Valley realized it had overstuffed its employment roles. This was the moment that Elon came out and said, I'm firing X% of the staff. And everybody, you know, bellyached. And then shortly after that, all the Silicon Valley companies saw that as, you know, license to get rid of this dead weight that they'd been carrying, you know, that they'd been building since even before the pandemic, I will say. But despite that, this is a very real problem since the ChatGPT moment. So there we are, 25 weeks employment duration, up from 20 weeks. Recent grad unemployment 6.5% and climbing. And that's partially to do with the ChatGPT moment. It's partially due to the decline in quality of our graduates, which is a whole subject for another whole conversation. But clearly, our colleges have fallen in quality very dramatically over the past 5 to 10 years. Federal layoffs, the Doge effect, that's been a big number, but it's nothing compared to state and local governments. And by the way, state and local governments increasing their employment to very high levels has a double whammy. The one is, it increases the amount of money spent on government, which is, doesn't have a multiplier effect in the economy, but it increases the time to market for any company that's attempting to build buildings, bring product to market, open new product market, and so on, because you get this bureaucratic layering.
So Larry, again, she leaves out the demographics. When you talk to Cathie, would you suggest that she really pays attention to the demographics? Because Chair Powell said, and others have said, that this massive return of folks to Mexico or to South America is impacting this labor market as much, if not more than anything. When we're seeing zero growth in employment, or 20,000 growth in employment, or per month, this is all the things that she says are true. But then you have to take into consideration all these folks going home. And I didn't fully understand it until last month when Powell got into details. And he said, look, if you don't have as many people to hire, you can't have increases in the number of people employed. So if you send home 2 million workers, you can't possibly, that population is gone. You can't hire from that population. And so if you are calling up companies and saying, how many employees did you hire this month? Well, we didn't hire any, and we sent home 20,000 because they left.
Well, the analysis fails.
Okay.
If you have unemployment in your economy and you take 70,000 people and you ship them out, you would expect that the people who are unemployed would fill those roles.
But they are. So Americans have gotten almost all the jobs since Trump's been in office, and you've seen the decline in people that are not from the United States.
Then unemployment should remain static.
Well, the problem is, though, is you're taking way more people than that out of the economy, and you can't make the changes as rapidly as you would like to. Again, agriculture, the three categories: agriculture, construction, and what do you call it? Hotels and restaurants. There's no way to the statement that Americans don't want to do those jobs is true.
Well, okay. There you go. That may be the underlying problem. And then you have to look at social welfare and say, are social welfare policies detracting from the will of people to actually take those jobs as an entry level into the economy?
Yep. And
again, I know I'm going to get a lot of hate mail for saying that, but I mean, that is the question to ask.
It's true, really true.
Housing market paralysis continues. Sales are at 1970 levels despite larger population. Look at this. Home sales in 1970, 4 million units. Home sales in 2025, 4 million units. And yet we were up to 7 million units in the 2000s. But 2010, we were at 5 million units.
We shouldn't really look at the 2000s. That was a blip because of the free money.
2020.
Yeah, that's more normal. That's more natural. But again, we had historically low amounts of inventory during those times of people fighting over homes. So it was a tremendous amount of demand, not enough supply.
I think the 2020s, the principal argument for the principal reason, I would say, for the high level of house building is because of ZIRP, zero interest rates.
100%. There was a big reason, sure.
Yeah, yeah. So there's a lot of there's a high intention to buy homes, but
Yes.
the buying conditions are terrible. The pending home sales are very low, except for my home, which sold within a week, and the new home inventory, which is elevated.
We're also seeing, Larry, that on the dips, people are buying homes. So we get close to 6%. All of a sudden, there's a bunch of homes get sold, goes back up to 6.25, 6.3. Then you got a stop. So
You mean a dip in the interest rates?
dip in the interest rate, yes.
Yeah, yeah, fair enough. So new home prices are falling, but not enough to clear inventory. Existing home prices, home price increases are slowing towards zero.
Mhm.
So this is the change in home prices. It was up to 4% in 2024. It's down to zero. That must have an impact on inflation, and
No kidding.
and that's a huge delay in our inflation reporting, which Trueflation doesn't delay.
And rents are actually going negative.
Yeah, rents are going negative. And again, those are items that don't show themselves in our numbers.
Right.
So consumer stress, auto loan defaults are at crisis levels. So if we follow this graph, subprime auto loan delinquency rates are rising to really high levels. I mean, 11%. I mean, we haven't seen that since the global financial crisis. And auto loan, so this is subprime, and then this is auto loans themselves, not the subprime lending, but the lending to normal
Right.
credit risks. They're also rising to 2009 levels. That's kind of red light flashing. So personal savings rate is not rising despite economic concerns. Saving rate remains flat. People who are hurt cannot save. They're not making enough money. So Uber, Lyft changing calculus. People experiencing financial stress saying, "I'll let them take my car. I can pay as I go with Uber or Lyft," and that's gonna explode when the prices drop like 70%.
Right.
As a result of Tesla coming into market with robotaxi. The velocity of money is rolling over. Consumer pain reflected in declining velocity of money, indicating reduced economic activity and spending, and rising delinquencies signal significant consumer distress that Fed should be responding to, especially as the labor market weakens. Not great news.
All true.
Which is another reason that Powell's on the wrong side of this war. Capital goods breaking through historic ceiling, the beginning of a major US spending cycle. So the good news in all of this bad news economy is the OB3 is working.
Yes.
Everything we talked about, that's the good cycle because of OB3 policies, 100% depreciation. We've discussed at length. Foreign direct investment, thank you, tariffs. AI infrastructure, thank you, ChatGPT. Power infrastructure, thank you, ChatGPT. So AI is and Cathie said we're at the beginning of a big cycle here. We think if you look at this, it used to peak at the same level over 25, 30 years, and we've burst through that. This is the green shoots. They're not even green shoots. They're now strong, they're strong. Yeah. And it's very hard for these guys in the Fed to see it. I see it. I see it in I attend a lot of these investment conferences, and I see the huge, difference between the staid, stuffy, old school, banking houses. People arrive in three-piece suits, two-piece suits now. They're really, letting loose. And, they have gray hair or no hair, saving my grace. And then there's the young crowd. I was at the Ron Barron conference, and I will say this, the Barron conference is completely different. Everybody at the Barron conference loves Tesla. Gray hair, black hair, no hair, and a preponderance of women investors and women, and they all love Tesla, they all love AI, they're all absolutely aligned with the message that Cathie is giving. But yet you go to these, the wirehouses, their conferences, you go to the state investment companies, whether it's a BlackRock or a Vanguard, and man, those people are like, they're still living the dream of the 50s, 60s, 70s, talking asset allocation, talking, anyway, it is what it is. They should read the books.
They should.
Read about JP Morgan. I'm talking about the man, not the bank. I'm talking about, Edison. I'm talking about Marconi. I'm talking about, Ford. I'm talking about the greats and the great periods of our economy.
In the future, in AI rising.
Yes, read the book. I mean, you'll get it very clearly there. Deflationary forces are mounting. So the interesting thing is Cathie's calling for deflation.
Yeah.
Look at commodities. Back in 1980, the commodity index was 100.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the commodity index today.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, that's in current money.
Yeah.
So can you imagine that commodities are like dramatically more expensive in 1980 than they are today? The metals gold ratio is falling, historically correlated with the economic activity. Breakdown suggests China exploiting deflation globally. Get ready for deflation, folks. And the Fed is still fighting inflation. It reminds me of this whole story of the three-piece suits versus the slacks and chinos. I mean, slacks and I don't know, whatever, sneakers. Oil prices are declining. Commodity index is at the 1890s level. It peaked in 2008 at 240. And China, US exports are down 25%, world exports are up 3%. China is cutting prices aggressively to maintain volume in the rest of the world, given the US tariffs.
As Jeff Lutz and I predicted a year ago.
Yeah. I mean, that was a really strong prediction. So market indicators, S&P versus, gold. I mean, look at how the ratios, wobbled. So the ratio is under pressure as gold surges and S&P wobbles. So this could go down to, an historic low level of 2010 or 1980. And high yield credit spreads. High yield credit spreads are extremely tight. In other words, nobody cares. When the credit spread is so low, it means that we can lend you money. We don't think you're going to ever go bankrupt.
Right.
So ARK's view is that gold at historic highs relative to money supply, only two other times this high, expected to decline as the productivity story emerges.
So I'm going to layer on my demographic story again, Larry, and I actually asked Grok to help me with this last week. Young people are not entrepreneurial. They're just not. They're not starting small manufacturing businesses, small retail stores, or big retail stores, or they're not starting those kind of companies. They might be trying to start an AI company or a software company where they believe they can make fast riches. But when it comes to those kinds of things that you and I might have started in the 50s, 60s, or 70s, that's not the kind of companies that are started. So the banks,
you're right.
These companies, wholesalers, manufacturers, retailers, they're now owned by old people. They're owned by people that are in their 50s or 60s, and so they're stable. These people have money. They've got money in the checking account. They got money in the savings account. They got money. They got their house paid for, and so that's why they're so strong in terms of this credit swap situation. The banks are not worried about those folks.
Right. I would also say that, and this doesn't touch on that particular finding, but it is an interesting it's an interesting thesis to be explored, and that is fewer number of young people are starting firms, but those that are starting firms are likely to grow faster and larger
Yes,
than those that our generation
Yes.
started in our youth.
100%.
Few are going to succeed, but they're going to succeed larger and more explosively. So that brings us to, the summary, and that is, oh no, it doesn't bring us to the summary. Excuse me. It brings us to Bitcoin outlook revised and bull market thesis. So Cathie is saying that she's revising down her Bitcoin bull case because stable coins are usurping the insurance role, the role of insuring against, what's happening to the dollar or what's happening to fiat currency. It's an interesting thesis. I'm not sure I'm signed on to it yet. I don't know that I was ever signed on to Bitcoin being the goal, the future goal.
Right.
So they see that the impact to Bitcoin is going to be, impact on its market cap. It's strange that they say that because I think stablecoin market cap is going to grow quite significantly. And so that argues that there's going to be continued decline in the Bitcoin value.
Yeah.
But the gold market cap has doubled with an offsetting factor of 200 to 300K on the Bitcoin price. In other words, the fact that the gold market cap has doubled means that the Bitcoin cap can rise dramatically, and that offsets this loss of value, potential market value caused by the stablecoin. So they keep this price target of 1.5 million per Bitcoin intact.
Wow.
Overall bull market thesis, they're going to see declines through to they're going to see continuing rises in the market conditions. See this index of 100, I guess this is rate of growth. I'm not sure. It's interesting. I'm not sure what the axes are. So they see a short-term liquidity clearing. We've discussed that. We see the rolling recession moving into rolling recovery, and we see a product-driven boom 2026. I think we're already experiencing it already, or we're already experiencing the front wave of that, and we're getting out of the recession.
I know that people probably think I spend a lot of time talking about durable goods, but I just think it's such an important part of the story. Having been in the bicycle industry my whole life, and bicycles are a durable good, I really pay attention to that cycle because it was impacting my business. It was impacting all the bike shops that I was dealing with. And we've never, ever, ever seen a cycle like this, Larry, where you've got over 3 years of recession in durable goods.
Right.
And I believe it's 100% the under 100,000 a year people. They just can't go out and buy a refrigerator and pay 22% interest to get that refrigerator. Just impossible. So once we get around the corner on the interest rates, once we get around the corner on people feeling a little more certain about their job, the durable goods thing could explode, and that could really, really help the overall economy.
I agree with that 100%. I think we are going to see a return of the market. I think it'll happen. But, I think this Fed has overmanaged the economy. And I think they don't understand. They're the three-piece suits guys. They just don't understand what has happened. And so, I wish people would listen to Cathie more. I really do. I mean, she's been so right in the past. I think she's right now. So here endeth the lesson, everybody.
Oh, that's the end. Okay, all right.
That was the summary. That was the out.
Yeah. Well, as always, Larry, I don't know whether, I know we're getting very good numbers on these shows, so I guess people enjoy them. I know that I do. This is like enriching to me every month because I can listen to Cathie. I can hear what Cathie has to say, but then when you and I put our similar points of view, but disparate because we're coming at it from very different worlds, I think it just has a tremendous amount of color for my understanding. I hope it does for other folks as well.
Yeah, and I try and boil it down and try and synthesize it. I'm not sure I'm doing Cathie justice.
It looks okay to me.
But if we excite enough interest for people to go and listen to the whole thing, that would be, I think, mission accomplished. If we get people somewhat interested in the economy, and that would be mission accomplished. And if Powell would listen to us, that would truly be, the final target. I mean, the guy has got to get his act together. He has got to get his act together. And I've been mildly supportive of him in the first Trump administration.
Yes, but
But
then,
I think, sorry,
but then, yeah, no.
I think he really got surprised by the, fact that he said that the transitory, effect of, and the thing is that, Biden just overspent by such an egregious amount. It wasn't if he overspent. Okay, every administration overspends, but it was so egregious. The Build Back Better bill was absolutely unnecessary, and the inflation, it could have been really bad. So you have to thank Powell for getting that under control. But then he was so frightened, it really scared the pants off him.
Yeah, so he talks. So that's the funny part this is the crazy part. And I said it earlier, but I'm going to say it again. He says out loud, Collins, who's a hawk, says out loud the tariffs don't count. And yet they don't subtract it from their own numbers and say we're close. I mean, how can you have one and not the other? It just drives me crazy. But Larry, the number one thing I want to leave people with is if you believe that your job is in jeopardy, if you think AI is going to take your job, you owe it, or your child's job, or your grandchild's job, then I think they owe it to themselves, Larry, to go get the book and buy copies of it for their child and their grandchild, because there's so much information in there about how to start now to prepare yourself for the AI job market.
And the book is called AI Rising, and it's available on Amazon and all booksellers near you.
Thank you for that, Larry. Thank you so much for always doing this. It has really been fun as usual. And to all of you folks out there, it's been great talking to you.